Today we're going to look at fraction word problems. You are allowed to use a calculator for these, so I certainly encourage you to do that. Everything we're going to look at today is a mix of multiplying and dividing. So it's important for us to look at this and think about some keywords, some key ideas that help us know which kind of problem to do. And in the case of division, which order to put the numbers in. So remember, with multiplication, that's when we're doing repeated addition or doing something over and over. It can also be when we're finding a part of something, and remember then the of would be our indicator that it's multiplication. And that's not just because you see the word of in a problem, it's because you see where you can do a part of something. So for example, 3/4 of something or 9/10 of something. That would tell you that it's going to be a multiplication. That's when you want to find something like that. So let's look at these. And the other thing we're going to do is try some problems and check and make sure our answer makes sense. So number 1, Miss Daza bought 3.5 yards of yellow fabric. She used 2/3 of the fabric to make a chicken costume. How much fabric did she use? So take a moment, see what problem you think you would do, and then pause while you do that, and then we'll go over it. All right, so looking at this, the question says, how much fabric did she use? And in the problem it says, she used 2/3 of the fabric. But when we say it's 2/3 of the fabric, that's what we need to find. 2/3 of the fabric. So when we look at the fabric, what number we need for the fabric, there were 3.5 yards of fabric. So we're trying to find 2/3 of 3.5, which means 2/3 times 3.5 would be the problem that we need to do for that question. Remember that you can use a calculator to work this out. When you do work out this problem, you're going to get 2 1/3 yards, which that answer does make sense. We're using more than half the fabric, and so that makes sense. Now, I will tell you, sometimes people think on that problem, oh, well, they think it's division. They want to do 3.5 because we're going to cut up the fabric to make the costume, and they're going to divide by 2/3. And when they do that, they get 5 1/4. So that would make our answer 5 1/4 yards. If you think about that, that can't be right. How can you use 5 1/4 yards if you only have 3.5 yards? So that's what I mean by looking at your answer and making sure your answer makes sense. As you're listening to this, make sure you are writing down problems and answers, thinking about keywords and things like that, because that's going to help you a lot on your homework. All right, so looking at our next problem. So for our next problem, it says, Julia studied math for 3 1/3 hours during the 4 days before her last math test. What was the average amount of time she studied each day? When it asks the average amount each day, what it means is if she studied the same amount each day, then how much did she study each day? Pause, think about what you would want to do, and hit play when you're ready. All right, so when we look at this, if we know she studied 3 1/3 hours and she studied that over the course of 4 days, and we want to know how much each day, that means we want to take all of her studying, which is the 3 1/3 hours, and split it into 4 parts because she split it among 4 days. And so that's the problem that we're going to do. Do that on your calculator and see what you get. If you're using the Desmos calculator, you're going to need to first change the 3 1/3 into 10/3, and then once you put in 10/3, then make sure you arrow over and then use your division sign, and it's going to look on your screen, it's going to look like this. And then put your 4 on the bottom, and that will do the math for you. And then our answer that you get when you do that is 5/6 of an hour. So our answer is 5/6 of an hour. Now, another thing that might help you with this, and maybe this was tickling in your brain somewhere, rolling around. Let's see. Hold on a minute. This might make us think a little bit. It says she studied 3 1/3 hours during the 4 days before her test. We want to know how much she spent in 1 day. That's like finding a unit rate. So the two things that are being compared are the hours and the days. We know she spends 3 1/3 hours in 4 days. We want to know how much time in 1 day. Now, the reason this is really beneficial is because it helps you know whether to multiply or divide. Because when we cross multiply and then divide, 1 times 3 1/3 is 3 1/3 time or divided by 4 equals x. So that shows us that our problem has to be 3 1/3 divided by 4. That's another way to figure out what to do. All right, looking at the next problem, problem 3. There is less gravity on the planet Trang than on Earth. In fact, you could jump about 2 2/3 times as high on Trang as on Earth. If you can jump 4 1/4 feet on Earth, how high could you jump on Trang? Well, it says on Trang you could jump about 2 2/3 times as high. So 2 2/3 times, that times means multiply. So 2 2/3 times 4 1/4. Take a moment, put that into your calculator. In this case, if you're using the Desmos calculator, you do not have to rewrite, you do not have to write the mixed numbers and improper fraction, although you could. And then the easiest way to put this on your keyboard would be to put 2 and then the space key, 2 \3, and then arrow over. That's going to make the arrow to the right. That's going to make the mixed number 2 2/3 for you. And then you could put times 4 space 1 \4, arrow to the right. And that's going to give you a decimal answer, but change those decimal answers for all of these. Change your decimal answers into fraction answers, please. All right, so if you did this problem, you should have gotten 34 thirds. And 34 thirds is equal to 11 1/3, but we don't necessarily need to change that. If we were putting it in Canvas, we wouldn't change that. We would leave it as an improper fraction. All right, question 4. A gasoline pump delivers 4 2/5 gallons of gas per minute. How many minutes will it take to fill a gas tank that holds 16 1/2 gallons? Take a moment and think about this problem. Think about what you think you should do, and hit play when you think you're ready. All right, so we can basically put 4 gallons of gas per minute in our car, approximately 4 gallons per minute, and we want to put in about 16 gallons. So that should make sense to you. If I can put in 4 gallons a minute, that's 4 gallons in 1 minute, 8 gallons in 2 minutes, 12 gallons in 3 minutes, 16 gallons in 4 minutes. So my answer has to be somewhere around 4, and that's something that I could use to judge the reasonableness of my answer. Now, another thing that you might notice is, it's 4 2/5 gallons of gas per minute. So you might say, I can use a bridge map to help with this one, because we're looking at the relationship between the number of gallons of gas and the number of minutes. And it says 4 2/5 gallons of gas per minute. That means 4 2/5 gallons in 1 minute. And what we want to know is, how many minutes does it take to fill 16 1/2 gallons? So that's going to make this problem significantly easier to know what to do. So 1 times 16 1/2 divided by 4 2/5, which really we don't necessarily have to multiply by the 1 because that doesn't change our answer. So that tells us the problem we need to do is 16 1/2 divided by 4 2/5. 16 1/2 divided by 4 2/5. So you should be able to do that on your calculator. Again, this one you're going to have to change the 16 1/2 into an improper fraction first, and that's going to be 33 halves. And then when you after you hit the 33 halves, arrow to your right, and then hit the division button, and it's going to look like this on your calculator. And then you can divide by 4 2/5. So you've got to change the 4 2/5 to an improper fraction, which it's going to be 22/5. And if you weren't sure what improper fractions those were going to be, You could have started by putting 16 and 1/2 in your calculator and then hit equals, and it will tell you what improper fraction it equals. And then clear it and put 4 and 2/5 in the calculator, hit equals, and it will tell you what 4 and 2/5 equals as an improper fraction. Now, once you have worked this out, you are going to get 3 3/4, which is close to, or you're going to get, you are going to get 3 3/4 or 15/4. So your answer is 15/4 of a minute, which is equal to 3 3/4 minutes. So that's around our estimate of 4 minutes. So we think that's probably a pretty good, pretty accurate answer. We think that's probably, that answer makes sense. All right, let's look at another one. A piece of plywood 24 inches wide is cut into strips 2 1/2 inches wide. How many strips of this width can be cut? So we see something here being cut into equal parts. So that's a pretty clear-cut indicator that we're going to want to do division here. (24) divided by 2 1/2. And the way I know what order to put that in is the 24 is what's being divided. It's the big piece of plywood that we're cutting into parts. And the 2 1/2 is how it's being divided. It's being divided into parts that are each 2 1/2 inches. So I need to do 24 divided by 2 1/2. When you do that on your calculator, you're going to do 24 divided by, and then you can put in your mixed number, 2 space 1\2. That's how I would key it in using the keyboard. It's easier to do that than using the buttons necessarily. And when you do that, it gives you the answer 9 3/5. Now, I want you to understand, though, that the answer to this problem is not actually 9 3/5. Mathematically it is, but how many strips of this width, how many strips that are 2 1/2 inches wide can I actually get? I can get 9 whole strips and part of another one. So how many strips that are 2 1/2 inches wide? There are 9 of them. So my answer to that problem would actually be 9. All right, number 6. The distance a bicycle travels with each turn of its wheels is about 3 1/7 times the tire diameter. The tires on Mike's bicycle have a diameter of 24 1/2 inches. How far does it travel with each turn of the wheels? So it says it travels, the distance a bicycle travels with each turn of its wheels is, that means equals, about 3 1/7 times the tire diameter. So that tells me what to do. 3 1/7 times the tire's diameter. Well, the diameter is 24 1/2 inches. So there's my problem that I need to do. 3 1/7 times 24 1/2. And once I put that in my calculator, I'm going to get 77 inches as my answer. All right, number 7. Now this one's a bit tricky, and it's going to be easier if we draw a model. It says an aquarium holds 6 1/4 gallons of water. The water level has dropped to 4/5 of this amount. How much water should be added to fill the aquarium? There's actually quite a few ways you could look at this problem. I would maybe look at it this way. I would say, here's my aquarium. And when it is all the way full, it holds 6 1/4 gallons. But it is not all the way full. My little fishy's swimming around in there. And the water level has dropped to 4/5 of this amount. So what that means is the water is, if I think about it as fifths, when I look at that, if it's at 0, then it's empty. If it's 1/5 of the way full, it would be here, all the way up to 5/5, or all the way full. So if it has dropped to 4/5 of this amount, that means it's right about here. And so this is the part that I need to fill up. Well, that part that I need to fill up is 1/5 of the aquarium, because 4/5 of it is full. That means 1/5 is not full. So I need to fill 1/5 of the aquarium. And when I look at my problem carefully, I notice that my aquarium holds 6 1/4 gallons of water. So I need to fill 1/4 of 6 1/4. That means I need to do, or 1/5 rather, not 1/4 of 6 and 1/4, 1/5 of 6 and 1/4. So I need to do 1/5 times 6 and 1/4 because it's a part of something. I need to fill part of the aquarium. So to do that, I need to multiply the part I need times the amount the aquarium holds. And when I work that out, I will get 1 1/4 gallons, which is 5/4 of a gallon. All right, last question. Question 8. Sean used 3/4 cup of sugar to make a dozen brownies. How much sugar is in each brownie? So think to yourself for a minute what you would need to do to solve that problem. And when you think you know what you would need to do, go ahead and hit play and see if you were correct. All right, most people generally pick out that this is a division problem. It is. It says Sean used 3/4 cup of sugar to make a dozen brownies. How much sugar is in each brownie? So it is a division problem. Where people sometimes get confused is in what division to do. So we need to take so people think, oh, I need to do 12 times 3/4. Well, first of all, if you did 12, or 12 divided by 3/4, if I did 12 divided by 3/4, I'm going to get 16. And 16 cups. Does it make sense that each brownie has 16 cups of sugar? Definitely not. What you would have done wrong in that case is you have the order incorrect. You're not wanting to take the 12 brownies and split it into parts that are 3/4 cup of sugar or anything like that. You are instead wanting to take the 3/4 cup of sugar and split it into 12 parts so that each brownie gets some sugar. So that's the problem we need to do. That's the problem you need to put in your calculator and get your answer for that. Another thing you might have done is realized, oh, wait a minute. There's a relationship between the amount of sugar I use and the number of brownies I make. So the cups of sugar compared to the number of brownies. So what it says is it takes 3/4 cup of sugar to make 12 brownies. I want to know, a dozen is 12. I want to know how much sugar is in each brownie. So how much sugar in one brownie? It becomes really obvious what I have to do here. Because I can either see, well, I have to use a scale factor of 12 or 1/12. I have to divide by 12, which means I have to do 3/4 divided by 12. That's one way you could see it. You could also cross multiply and then divide. So you could do 1 times 3/4 divided by 12, which I then don't really need the one because 1 times 3/4 doesn't, it just equals 3/4, so it doesn't change the answer. So it's just 3/4 divided by 12. All right, so again, as you're looking at fraction word problems, I know they can get a little overwhelming, but really think through, if you think it's a multiplication or division, think through with multiplication. What keywords do I see? Is it a part of something? Do I see the word times? Do I see something happening over and over again? That would be a good indicator that there's some multiplication. Division is going to typically be when you're splitting something up into equal parts. Notice that bridge maps can be really handy if you see two things that are related, that are in ratio with each other, or that have a ratio relationship. Then you can use a bridge map to help you set it up, and then that will help you figure out what to do to solve the problem, whether it's truly a multiplication or a division.